We open to see a man named Sergio inside a jewelry shop, staring at a beggar outside on the street. He is there to buy something, but his card declines, making him pay with cash, and after that, we see him leave the shop. Later, we see a young couple dancing to some sick pop beat while Sergio sits with his wife. When his son arrives, saying that he has to go to the bathroom, Sergio leaves with his sissy kid as his wife lights up a cigarette. The boy gets out after getting his business done, and we see the father-son duo have a man talk about how in no time he will grow up and marry someone. They go back to the party as we see the couple's daughter make a speech saying how she idolizes her mother and father and wants to be like them. As she is talking, Sergio gets emotional seeing his little princess talk. As everyone cheers, the couple gets their photos taken, and we see Sergio with a guarded expression as he stares at a guest. He starts to feel lightheaded, making his wife worried, and eventually we see him pass out. Later on, regaining his senses, he gets checked up as his wife fusses over him. Now at home, Sergio tells his wife Estella how his business is struggling, indicating his bad money issues. The couple starts to argue as Sergio talks about owing a lot of money to bad folks. The next day, Sergio goes to work when he gets confronted by the workers about paying them what he owes them. We see Sergio getting more and more frazzled as he starts to shout at the workers. Sergio meets with his friend Raul and tells him about his situation. They go on to talk about the man named Brenner from whom Sergio took a loan and how he is a very dangerous man. Sergio seems extremely worried for his kids and wife as he starts to talk about life insurance, making Raul worried. He gets an idea about selling his vacation house to Raul to get some money so he can pay Brenner. Estella, who is working, receives a call, and we see her rush to her daughter's school upon learning that she got into trouble. The principal talks to her, mentioning that they are late on tuition payment, and soon they may have to strike off the kids because of it. This ends up making Estella worry for their future. Meanwhile, a stressed out and snappish Sergio goes to meet a man named Hugo. We learn that Sergio also owes him money but can't pay it at the moment. On Hugo's insistence, Sergio asks him if he sent the man to her daughter's party, but Hugo just starts to call him out, asking him to return the money. As Sergio goes on giving excuses, Hugo makes a chilling comment that if he loves his family, he will return the money soon. A shocked and distressed Sergio leaves the office and goes to buy his prescription stress drugs, but we see that his prescription is expired, which makes him lose his cool, scaring others. Seeing the condition of the man, the cashier gives him the medicine. Later at home, Sergio learns about the fight his daughter Flor got into. We learn that the reason for the fight was that in her school there is talk going on about how Sergio is a scammer. After Flor leaves, not caring about her husband, Estella goes on and on about how they are going to lose everything because of Sergio. As Sergio gets ready to leave, he receives an envelope from a man who drives off in a hurry. Getting in his car, he opens it and finds pictures of his family inside, making him go blank. He rushes to hide them as his family arrives and drives off. At the house gathering, we see him spaced out as others enjoy their lunch. Soon an argument breaks out as a man named Diego and Sergio talk about how Sergio owes him money as well. The argument escalates to a full-on physical fight as their family tries to calm them down. At night, we see the couple talking as Estella asks why he didn't tell her about the troubles sooner. In response, Sergio tries to lighten things up, but Estella puts him down. In the morning, we see the kids leaving for school after Matt gives his father a drawing he made, which seems to make Sergio smile. Seeing Sergio worried, Estella tries to reassure him. Sergio goes to meet the lender when he sees Hugo's secretary, making him follow her. Suddenly, there is a huge blast which makes everything go dark. The scene opens up with a reporter telling about the destruction that happened as Estella watches the news. She calls to get information about Sergio and learns how he was at the site of the explosion. She goes to check on him and sees his parked car. Now frazzled, Estella searches for her husband. Back home, everyone is worried about Sergio as he hasn't been found yet. Estella waits tirelessly for some news on her husband when she gets a call and goes to the police station. The scene is very heart-wrenching as people cry and mourn for their lost loved ones. Estella is taken to identify pictures but does not find Sergio there. As she waits, another woman arrives and starts to cry when she sees her brother's picture. After her, another man arrives and cries while looking at the picture. A man brings Sergio's bag to Estella, which makes her cry in grief. We then see the moment after the blast as Sergio wakes up. Struggling, he gets up and looks around at the chaotic scene. A paramedic arrives and guides him to an ambulance. Sergio sits, holding his head, as the paramedics try to keep a man from dying. Sergio, now at the hospital, gets his injuries checked, and we see that they are not that serious compared to others. He walks the hallways, looking stunned, and makes a call to someone, but they don't pick up. He takes a cab, looking dead and somber. We see him board a bus on his way to somewhere. In the morning, we see him arrive at another estate as he shops for clothes and other items. He goes to some boatmen, asking if they can get him across Paraguay, to which, despite some reluctance, they agree. While on the boat, Sergio looks emotional as he sees the picture that Matt drew for him. We skip to 4 months later, with Sergio working and talking to another man. He carries the stuff inside the shop, and we see that he has changed his name to Nico. Sergio returns to his apartment after work. He lights up a candle on a cake, sadly celebrating his son's birthday alone. On the other hand, Matt is having a full party with his family. As Estella smokes, Diego comes and makes heartless comments about how Estella should claim Sergio's insurance money. Fed up with the conversation, she shuts him down. Later on, she goes to school and learns that her children have received scholarships, relieving her worries. However, despite being happy, she mourns while thinking of her husband who died, worrying about their financial situation. Meanwhile, Sergio goes to work. But his boss assigns him a difficult task which angers Sergio even though a woman assures him. Deep in thought, Sergio gets on a bus. At the same time, Estella signs the insurance papers. She then goes to the factory where Sergio used to work and talks with her friend Paula about Brenner and how she is still worried because they haven't paid him. She goes to talk to Hugo next. He offers his condolences as Estella nervously tells him about the debt, but he reassures her that it wasn't for her to pay. Estella is relieved to hear it and leaves after thanking the man. She tells him how Sergio was killed while bringing the money to Hugo, which shocks him. Sergio is at his job when his boss makes comments about getting him an ID, which worries Sergio. We see a sad scene of him enjoying his meal alone and feeling desolate. We skip to see Estella get a call. She sees Hugo standing outside and demands to know why he is here. He creepily starts to ask why she tried to insinuate that Hugo had something to do with Sergio's death. She clarifies her statement while still being hesitant of him. We see Sergio arrive at a Christmas party hosted by his boss. He sits down surrounded by people, sees them enjoying the carefree moment, and gets melancholic about his own family. He receives his ID from the pretty lady who asks him about his story. He tells her how he has a family and misses them. The party erupts in laughter as a man named Gordo arrives dressed as Santa Claus, but the merry moment ends as he falls down and dies. Sergio offers his condolences as he holds the hand of the orphan boy. Meanwhile, his family seems to be having a great time with Hugo on the boat. We skip to Sergio again, now older and haggard, as he blows out the candle for his son who is now 22 years old. He leaves his house to go to the shop where he is now the boss, buying a gift for someone while counting his money. Later at home, we see how he became the boss by cozying up to his previous boss's wife. The next day, he goes to work again as part of his usual routine. She asks him to buy chicken to make dinner. While Sergio is in the market, a woman sees him and starts to hyperventilate. We learn that she is his old housekeeper, and Sergio warns her about telling anyone about him while explaining why he ran away. Shaken by his encounter, Sergio thinks about it at night. He goes to the shop and opens his laptop, searching for anything on his kids. He finds his daughter's account. We see him having a talk about making a Facebook account with a young coworker. The woman arrives and asks him what is wrong with him these days. We see her acting compassionate, telling him to do whatever he wants to get this burden off his chest. At night, at home, Sergio goes through Flora's Facebook, smiling at how much his kids have grown up while also feeling sad that he missed their lives. We skip to see Estella and the children enjoying their time together. Hugo is also there and has dinner with them. They talk about Flora's wedding, but Estella notices how Hugo is too busy on his phone. We see a shell-shocked Sergio in his room when he gets a notification of a video that Flor posted. In the video, the siblings joke around, but it becomes emotional when Flor starts to talk about how much she misses her father. Filled with emotion, Sergio starts to cry and grieve in his apartment. We see him hit rock bottom when his dog passes away. The next day, the pretty woman arrives at Sergio's place, worried when he didn't show up for work. In a tense moment, we see Sergio say goodbye to the woman as he leaves with the intention to go back. Meanwhile, Estella and Hugo have an argument while Estella continues to talk about the wedding. Suddenly, Hugo crashes the car, and he goes out to see the damage. Estella sits there, noticing a gun in the glove compartment. Back at home, they argue about the gun like a couple having issues. Sergio, now back in town, drives around aimlessly. He calls home, but it goes to voicemail. Later that night, Sergio is still out when he notices Flor coming home. However, his staring session gets interrupted when he sees Flor driving off again. Acting on impulse, he follows her like a creep. He watches as she gets out of the car, and he does the same, passing by her unnoticed. But for some reason, he decides to go to the hotel right in front of the resort and books a room. Later on, we see him spying on them like a crazy stalker. He observes Estella, who is smoking on the balcony. Inside the house, the couple is unhappy about the situation from last night. In a market, Sergio follows Matt as he shops with his sister, acting like a total creep. Back at his hotel, he gets ready to go somewhere, dressing in an expensive suit and tie. However, there's a twist as he also grabs a gun. Before leaving, he writes an apology note to whoever finds his body, making the scene ominous. We see him arrive at his daughter's beautiful wedding. But sadly, now an outsider, he watches from afar. Suddenly, Matt sees him, causing Sergio to duck out of sight. He starts to tear up upon seeing his daughter, but the mood sours when he notices that it is Hugo walking her down the aisle. Devastated and angry, he leaves and grabs his gun, attempting to end his life, but ultimately stops himself. We see the wedding reception in full swing with everyone dancing. Sergio arrives there as well and sees Estella with Hugo, making him livid. He goes to the restroom and takes out his gun. Outside, we see Hugo receiving a call and entering the restroom, where he nervously threatens someone over the phone as Sergio listens in. With his mind made up about shooting him, Sergio suddenly retreats when Matt arrives. We see a poignant scene of a grown-up Matt now referring to Hugo as his dad, while his real father listens in silently. However, as their conversation shifts, we learn that Hugo is also hiding things from Matt. A shattered Sergio listens from a distance and decides to leave the party. Having seen enough, he puts on a mask and grabs a drink. Stumbling onto the dance floor, he starts to enjoy himself with other guests, gradually edging closer to Floor. He stares at his daughter when he gets interrupted by Estella, who sees him. Sergio quickly leaves the place as Estella follows him, calling out for him. Hugo arrives there as well, and we see Sergio's eyes fill with anger as he attempts to shoot Hugo but gets shot instead. In his final moments, he lies there in his wife's arms, thinking about his daughter one last time.